Hello biology class, this is lecture 13.5, which are cycles of matter. We're going to be able to describe how matter cycles among the living and non-living parts of an ecosystem, should explain why nutrients are important for living systems, and describe how the availability of nutrients affects the productivity of an ecosystem. So recycling in the biosphere. There's movement of energy and matter. Energy is only moved in one way, so the energy can be used up. And then matter is recycled within and between ecosystems using biogeochemical cycles. And these BCGs, also known as the biochemical cycles, connect biological, geological, and the chemical aspect of the biosphere. So it's mixing all of those three things together. So these cycles are kind of hard. You will have to know them though. We're going to start off with the oxygen cycle. Oxygen cycle is pretty easy. We have oxygen cycles indirectly through the ecosystem by cycling other nutrients. So here we have oxygen getting released within photosynthesis. We breathe in the oxygen and then breathe out carbon dioxide in respiration, and that's the oxygen cycle. The water cycle, also known as the hydraulic cycle. Also, on your conceptual understanding, I want you to be writing the steps out for these, not just the definitions of those. So, you need to know the steps of them. Okay, so the water cycle is repeated movement of H2O between the Earth's surface and the atmosphere. So to start off with, we have fresh water and salt water. After that, though that water is evaporated or transpired, or transpiration, and it is then goes through condensation within the clouds. So that means the water molecules start to gather up. Then it starts to precipitate, which is the rain. Then we have surface runoff, so that comes from the surface of the earth. It goes into collection, so then that would be like going back into the lakes or the oceans or the rivers. We have some percolation, which is actually like the absorption of water. And then we have the groundwater, and the groundwater is going to run back to those freshwater and saltwater spots. Other nutrient cycles. Nutrients are a chemical substance that an organism needs to be able to live. They are the chemical building blocks. Nutrients are moved through the environment through the biogeochemical cycles, So these cycles are pathways by which chemical element moves through the biotic and abiotic compartments of an ecosystem. So it's going to be the living and the non-living. The element is recycled or accumulated and held for a long period of time. So we're going to start off with the carbon cycle. Carbon is going to be the structural backbone of all organic material. It is part of ocean, air, rocks, soil, and all living things. Here's the first beginning part that you need to be writing down on your conceptual understanding, that carbon moves from the atmosphere to plants through photosynthesis. And then it moves from plants to animals, also in the food chain. It moves from plants and animals to the ground by when those things die and it starts to decay. And then it moves from living things to the atmospheres through respiration as well. So when we breathe, when living things are breathing, they're going to be breathing out CO2, so that's carbon, and it's going out into the atmosphere. And then from fossil fuels to the atmosphere when fuels are burned. So when you're running your car, you're burning CO2, or you're burning carbon. So it's actually carbon monoxide, not CO2, excuse me. And so those fuels are still carbon, and it's going out into the atmosphere. And then from the atmosphere to the oceans, which are bodies of water that soak up some of the carbon from the atmosphere. So not only plants soak it up with the water, soaks it up as well. So here it starts. We have, animals are respirating, so CO2 is being released. We have the boat, which is, or the factory, which is emitting carbon as well. That carbon dioxide goes through photosynthesis with sunlight, and then it's released back in fossil fuels, and the ground are decaying it and producing more CO2, the oceans uptaking it, and then it's just a keep going circle cycle here. Carbon sinks. Large reservoirs of carbon are in the biosphere. CO2 is in the atmosphere. Dissolved CO2 is in the ocean. On land in organisms, rocks, and soil. Underground as coal and petroleum and fossil fuels. So CO2 is everywhere. Next is the nitrogen cycle. Okay, all organisms need nitrogen. They make up amino acids. Is the nitrogen is going to be the part of the monomer for the proteins, and it also is part of the monomer for nucleotides, which we've already learned. So the nitrogen cycle is naturally occurring forms of nitrogen. So we have N2 gas, which is 78% of the atmosphere. It's the most abundant form of nitrogen on Earth, and it cannot be used by most organisms. Okay, we have NH3, which is ammonia, and that is naturally occurring but must be converted by bacteria, and only by bacteria, into NO3 and NO2, which is nitrate and nitrite. NO2 is the nitrate, nitrite, and NO3 is the nitrate. Those are kind of hard. How I remember it is 2, and you have 2 I's. And then nitrite, you just have to remember that one. So nitrite, nitrate. Nitrate and nitrite ions are found in waste produced by organisms and in dead decaying matter. Nitrogen fixation is a conversion of nitrogen gas N2 to ammonia by bacteria in the soil and in plants' roots. So it only happens with bacteria. Denitrification is the release of nitrogen into the atmosphere with soil bacteria break. Okay, so we have a picture here, and it's going to be nitrogen is actually in the atmosphere, and it is absorbed through the soil and through plants. And then we have the nitrogen fixing bacteria, which changes the nitrogen into ammonium. And then from there we have more nitrogen fixing bacteria, and it changes it to the nitrites, then to the nitrates, and then that bacteria also, the denitrification releases that back into the atmosphere. Here's another picture for you, because I know it's sometimes hard to understand. So we have nitrogen in the atmosphere, again, goes through nitrogen fixing bacteria, then to ammonium, and then nitrification again, nitrites to nitrates, sorry, and then back through denitrification back into the atmosphere. Okay, it can go through assimilation, go back to plants and then to animals. It can go from the plants to the decomposers back to ammonium, and then keep going. It also can go from the animals to decomposers to ammonium. So there's many different ways that this path can happen, and I think that's why it's so hard. So just know that nitrogen in the atmosphere has to go to ammonium, and then the nitrate to nitrates, and then back through. Nitrates and nitrates, those are two hard ones to remember too. Next we have the phosphorus cycle, which is very important because of RNA and DNA. If we didn't have phosphorus, we wouldn't have our DNA or our RNA. Also with ADP and ATP, because we know phosphorus makes up that energy. Phosphorus cycle is pretty easy as well. First off, the phosphorus cycle takes place at and below ground. So it's never up in the atmosphere. It's always going to be below ground down here. So phosphate is released by weathering of rocks. So it's going to be the weathering of rocks comes off. And then phosphorus moves up through the food web. And returns to the soil during decomposition. So once these, it takes through the plant's roots, and then the plants get eaten, and then through decomposition, it goes back through. We have phosphorus leaches in groundwater from the soil and is locked into sediments. So right here we have decomposition, uptake by photoplankton, keeps going. It's leaching from the soil, so that means it's coming out. And then in sediments we have it coming down here and also coming out. Both mining and agriculture add to phosphorus into the environment. So the primary productivity is the rate at which organic matter is created by producers. It's controlled by available nutrients. What is a limiting nutrient? A limited nutrient is a single nutrient that is scarce or cycles slowly, limiting the growth of an ecosystem. Aquatic ecosystems receive a large input of limiting nutrients, which is nitrogen and phosphorus. And this is the analgide bloom. There are more nutrients available, so the producers can quickly reproduce. So I don't know if you've ever seen algae per bloom, but this is what it looks like. And those are all the algae. Sometimes it makes it look red. Sometimes it'll be really, really green. You can't really swim in the water. So here is kind of, this is the nitrogen cycle by human and by natural activities. So we have the blue, it's cut off the screen, but the blue here is going to be for natural activities, and the red is going to be from humans. So humans produce the emission for nitrogen, and then it's absorbed all naturally. Ammonia is made, nitrates are made. So this is just another picture for you as well if you need that. And that is the end of the PowerPoint. If you have any questions, please ask.